the graphics in terms of the Wii version is like the actual gameplay. It's a tale of two games. The Werehog levels, although there are some nice looking environments, the actual ground and the textures you can tell are definitely more bland than their speed counterparts. And the Werehog model, when you actually get a good look at up close, you realize how low res it actually is. But the speed levels actually look really good because when you're actually moving, it has this nice little blur effect when you're zipping by. Gives you a great sense of speed. The graphics, in terms of the design of the game for the story mode, actually look pretty good. All the human characters have a more cartoony, I guess, claymation look for them, which is a nice thing because I think it basically sends a message that Sega's not taking themselves as seriously as they used to. Problem is some of the character design for the enemies in the Werehog levels are very generic and they're very repetitive. And same goes for the robots. Apparently a whole lot of thought was given to the look of the actual enemies and more was spent on the environments, at least for the speed sections anyway. But the graphics are above par for a Wii game, but that's not saying a whole lot because, I mean, we all know two GameCubes slapped together. But I'm not going to complain about the graphics because I've seen far worse on the system. I would put it slightly, when the graphics are actually good in the speed level, I would put it slightly above Secret Rings, but not quite Metroid Prime 3. And, you know, that sort of artistic design. So, graphics are okay. For speed sections, they are very good. For the Werehog levels, they're bleh. They look like they belong on, you know, the PS2. Which this game is, I guess, for the PS2 as well, but they could have spent more effort on the Werehog levels to try and spruce it up a bit for the Wii version. But oh well. Again, graphics and sound I'm not going to harp too much on, considering they're just okay. There's nothing special about them, but there's nothing particularly wrong about them. It's more about the game design I'm particularly ornery about. Now, something specific for the Wii game is that there are 3 different control methods. You have the Wiimote Nunchuck, the Classic Controller, and the GameCube Controller. Motion control, it's kind of iffy. Sometimes it'll miss a homing attack, sometimes it'll, you know, actually work pretty well. But if you have the Classic Controller or GameCube Controller, I would recommend using those, considering I don't like motion controls much, so I use the GameCube Controller through the vast majority of the game. So that's just the only really specific detail about the Wii version in particular. But it suffers from the same old, given the option to use the standard button inputs, you should. And it's a shame considering I use the button inputs more than I do anything else for the system, but that's Nintendo's own fault, not anyone else's, honestly. Overall, it controls pretty good for the speed levels. There are some times where it just won't quite do what you want sometimes, but that's usually because either you're going so fast you just don't have the time to react, or the standards from Sonic games of just sometimes just deciding to spaz out for no particular reason. Those moments are few and far between, but it's not that big of a deal. It's much better than the past couple of games in terms of actual controlling. The Werehog rarely will do what you tell it to do. I don't know how many times I've died because it did something I didn't do. And if you're using the GameCube, if you want to punch, you have to press the L and R triggers all the way down to where it does the little click. Otherwise, it will not read the punches, which is a massive shame because to do the click, it takes some time, and you just can't fight that quickly when you're trying to do the click. I wish Sega had done it like in Smash Brothers or Metroid, where you can sort of just push it down a bit and it'll still read it as an attack. But that's just one of the many issues with the Werehog I have, you know, previously documented. Now I guess going on to the final thoughts section. Considering this is following up Sonic 06, this is going to be an improvement regardless of what you really think of the game. The speed sections are very close to actually matching the sort of feel to the old Sonic games, which is a shame there isn't more of them. I mean, you just want to hit Sega and get them to realize we don't want the Werehog, we don't want a Psychic Hedgehog to mess up the gameplay. We just want Sonic to run fast, and this is what this game should have been, but unfortunately they have to shoehorn the Werehog in. In terms of the 3D Sonic games, if I'm basing it on the speed sections alone, it would be one of the best, but unfortunately that's only not even half the game in terms of actual time commitment for the story mode. So I would put it above Heroes if you just get it for the speed sections, but I wouldn't put it above the Adventure series in terms of overall fun, because at least the shooting and, you know, the treasure hunting in Adventure 1 were actually fun, and I still like the Eggman levels in Adventure 2, I don't care what anyone says, but half the game is boring, tedious, monotonous, terrible controls. It's just not fun. All the other half is what the entire game should have been. You know, running fast, doing homing attacks to, you know, go across gaps and so on and so forth. And it's just a shame that this was used in conjunction with another game style that shouldn't have been put in a Sonic game. I mean, in the long sections when you're playing nothing but the Werehog for a long period of time, you don't feel like you're playing a Sonic game. It's just kind of odd that Sega would try to do this. I mean, hell, it could have been Sonic and Knuckles 2 and just replace the Werehog with Knuckles, and I think most people would be happy with it, but unfortunately that's not the case. They had this half-baked idea. Overall, Sega, just make a game about the running. That's all you have to do to make a good Sonic game. That's it. And you'll have a good game. But unfortunately that doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. In terms of the Werehog and the stretchy arms and the fighting and the platforming, if you're going to do that, just make another Rise Star. It's really hard to rate this game on a scale considering it's two completely separate game styles. I will say that Werehog, basically it's as bad as 06. Maybe even worse depending on how patient you are with the game, but since I'm not a very patient person, I absolutely hated it. On par with 06's crappiness in terms of gameplay. About 3 out of 10, but again, I hate using the arbitrary 1 to 10 scales. Speed sections are as good as any 3D Sonic game has come close to replicating the feel of the old ones. So if you feel the need to buy this game, you're going to be buying it purely for half the game, not for the whole thing. It's a shame that this is typical game price, considering they should have charged you for only half of the game. Or at least give the option to only buy the speed sections. But overall, buy it for the speed sections, just play through the single player mode so you can get through the Werehog and get all the speed sections and then never come back to them again. That's my review of Sonic Unleashed. See y'all later.